Steve. Alain Lawrence, Steve,
Great seeing you. No,
very
my
happy
pleasure.
to have you here. And obviously for the audience, it's extremely important to see what is the perception. Market keeps coming up and up and up. And even though we all feel like we're due for a pullback, it's always surprising how the market is keep going up like there is no tomorrow. Tell us, what do you think about the market?
Well, listen, today is October 9th, and what we're seeing right now is the government shutdown. And I will make this prediction. We're going lower here. We're gonna retrace around anywhere between 4 to 7% because it's natural. Now, what that means to the viewer and the public is this: being cautious. Realistically, we're in a long-term bull market, but the pullbacks in technology and in certain sectors could be severe.
Listen, Steve, one of the things that you mentioned to the audience were in the exchange today, which is Thursday, October the 9th, I believe that you want to see that down the road, is that the goal recently, I think in the last 48 hours, from Tuesday the 7th till today the 8th, made a new highs over 4,000. Now people are saying that we might go to 4,500 in the gold in 2025 because potentially the debasement that we're seeing with the dollar. Bitcoin is not acting like that, but it's rumored that people will see Bitcoin over 135 before year end. What is your prediction if you can explain us with the gold and the Bitcoin, which seems to be ways where money managers are putting money in order to try to hedge again a debasement on the dollar, on the currency, and the other aspect that the market are implying out of that?
Well, there's two things. The first thing, being a member of the COMEX, we understand two things about the gold market. There isn't a lot of it. And that's what people really don't understand. We've been long gold for quite a while. Yes, gold will go higher, but when it comes off, it could come off $200-300 in a heartbeat. So you have to take a somewhat of a long-term perspective. Whereas something like silver, for example, the difference between gold and silver is very simple. Silver is actually used in every single device. Whether it's a cell phone, it is especially, all right, with commodities like copper and all the new data centers that are going to fuel the AI.
So if I understand you perfectly for the audience, you mean like the gold is something where you storage your money, but the silver is something that you actually use. So you think that with the silver, we might be seeing higher prices because of the demand of the actual end user use of the metal?
Absolutely.
Okay.
100%.
And that being said, you still thinking that with the gold, we can see new highs, even closer to the 4,500 mark in 2025? Or you think we want to stay around these 4,100, 4,000 on the gold?
Well, for someone like myself who manages close to $500 million in derivatives, all right, I've been very fortunate to be long gold.
Okay.
So it really depends on what your cost basis is. Could it go higher? Yes. Do I feel that we're at the top? Probably not. If there's fear, people are starting to use gold as a gauge. But on the physical side, there is not a lot of it.
One of the other things that I think the audience listening to us is causing with you every time we're interviewing you in our Negocios TV space and so on is that you always want to talk about the oil. Today, we're seeing the oil coming back to the potential low 60s. We might go to 60. But I remember when I interviewed you a few weeks ago, you mentioned that we might see 70 before 60. And at the end of the day, we are as good as your last trade. But I want your opinion now, where I'm thinking people is a little bit nervous that we can break that barrier of 60 going to the high 50s in the oil.
Let me say this too. There's a fundamental divergence. All right. The energy companies, fossil fuel is definitively still used. EV is not making it yet. And there is a fear of inflation, which we have. So typically, when you see gold rise, typically oil will rise. But there's a divergence. What I can tell you is this: there aren't a lot of refineries, and people are getting very frustrated with the EVs. It's a fact. I mean, the numbers are the numbers, and we're seeing it globally. We're seeing it globally. EV hasn't yet developed to where it might be in the future.
Steve, one of the things that captured my attention, and I want to throw this ball to you, which means I want your opinion, is that the premium of a geopolitical thing might be fading because as we speak, apparently there is a ceasefire or a peace agreement between Israel and Hamas. And we don't know how long that will last, but I think the opinion is that the administration, President Trump, is being able to articulate a peace plan that can allow this premium that it's always been there from the Middle East to go down. So do you think, even though people don't believe on EV, that people are still investing in some sort of resources in fossils, do you think that the actual oil might go to a rally, or do you think that we're going to keep it in this 60-something bracket for the next, let's say, 2.5 months until the Santa Claus arrive at the end of December?
Well, one thing you'll need to understand with oil, especially let's say in the United States, is that we are getting into the winter season. All right. And it will be more in demand. What we're also seeing is that countries like Japan have not committed to EV. And even countries like Canada have changed a lot of their laws right now, and they export electricity that they wanted to be all EV by 2026. And that's just not going to be feasible. It's just not there. But what I can tell you is that the energy companies, the large energy companies, I'm talking about the Exxons of the world, the Phillips, the Valeros, the biggest players in the world, they're reinvesting for the long term. And that's what the public doesn't understand. That's why, in my opinion, oil will go higher.
Changing the topic, today, the 9th of October, we got great results from Delta. Delta is a leading airline in the world, probably the number one also in the US in terms of satisfaction and stuff like that, safety and so on. Do you think that we're going to see a rally in the cruise line space in the airline because of this news? They are thinking that we might have a lot of demand. Obviously, we're in tough time. We don't know where the employment is because we're in the middle of a shutdown as we're doing this TV show. So where do you think this will land? Because the people down there in the exchange are very bullish on the airline sector based on what Delta was letting us to know earlier this morning.
Well, that's a good question and somewhat loaded. As a firm, we've been long Boeing, all right, and long Airbus. There are very few companies. The backlog for those companies are decades, and nobody can skip the line. And what you're also seeing in the airline industry, which is related to the global security, today, you can go and use Clearview. Just you put your eyes there, okay? Or when I travel, there's certain, the technology is there. And therefore, the consumer feels a lot safer because people get stressed when they travel. It's a stressful process. And what the airlines are realizing is how to improve that process, but it's a very tight cash flow model. I agree, airlines will go higher, but you just saw a company like Spirit, go BK, or, get restructured. So it's all about how you run it and the margins. And what you're seeing many times in the airline industry, you may buy the ticket, let's say from Air Canada, but Delta's doing the flight.
Yes, absolutely.
There's a lot of reciprocity, and they all are in it together.
Last but not least, to finish the interview for today, are you worried about the economy at this point? You mentioned that we might gonna go lower, and you mentioned something around 4 to 7%. Do you think that they're gonna buy the dip again, or you think that we're due for a correction that might last for a while?
We're gonna have the dip. And it's all going to be on what you buy. All right. And the dip will be serious depending on the security. It's all about, there's a famous saying, never put all your eggs in one basket. The public has a very short-term memory when it comes to the stock market. 2 years ago, Meta was at $90, but people also forget that it went from $350 to $90.
Absolutely.
Okay. And that is a lot of pain.
Absolutely.
That's a lot of pain. And you can't say woulda, shoulda, coulda in the market. Okay. You can't be a Monday morning quarterback.
Absolutely. I agree with you. I mean, that's why we are putting you in this situation where it's not easy, Steve, because you are telling the audience what do you think is going to happen, but you are as good as your potential last trade as they all adagio. So last but not least, to finish the interview, Steve, will you think that the gurus or the experts that we call the guys that are in other TV stations that are calling that the market will go to 7,100 on the last day of trading of 2025 are too optimistic on the S&P 500? Or you think that even though you see the pullback, it can be another leg up after that and we can go over 7,000 on the S&P? What is your call?
My call between now and the end of the year, that would be very unlikely of 7,000 change. All right. And today you saw Jamie Dimon come out. There might be a bubble here. Okay. You saw
not only Jamie Dimon, Steve.
Okay.
People,
Thomas Bravo. Things can get ahead of themselves. And that's happened many times in the market. And when they get ahead of themselves, the public tends to be the last buyer.
Absolutely.
All right. So the public needs to know. You have to know yourself and what you define as risk. And I think that's the key for any investor, institutional, retail, or someone who's opening up an account at a place like Robinhood on a credit card. Okay? So it's really understanding the risk reward as an individual. And that can only be answered by one person, the individual.
Listen, Steve, I'm very happy to have you here. This is one of an achievement of us in Negocios and obviously in Español for the audience. So I don't know if you want to at least see this saying the cámara son en Español, because you speak a little bit of Español. And I hear you sometimes and he's traveling to the region Latin America. So anything you can tell the others will be nice.
Sí. Yo necesito practicar mi español, pero yo entiendo todo. Pero es muy difícil en el negocio de la bolsa. No es para todo.
Absolutamente.
Okay? It's not for everyone. That's why you need to deal with experts.